Dearest mother, by the time you read this, the world will have changed forever. On a quiet summer day in 1914, an event occurred that would ignite the flames of war and change the lives of millions. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand in Sarajevo set off a chain reaction, plunging the world into chaos. In a matter of weeks, nations were dragged into a deadly conflict, bound by alliances and driven by a fervor for war. As Europe erupted, ordinary men like John from a quiet village found themselves in the midst of an unprecedented conflict. Thrown into the trenches, these soldiers faced unimaginable horrors: relentless artillery bombardments, deadly gas attacks, and the ceaseless threat of death. Amidst the carnage, battles like the Marne and Verdun became symbols of endurance and sacrifice, each one leaving an indelible mark on history. From the skies, aces like the Red Baron ruled the air, while on the seas, German U-boats threatened the vital supply lines of the Allies. The war's reach extended far beyond Europe, drawing in nations from every corner of the globe, each one fighting for its own survival and legacy. In 1917, a new player entered the fray. The United States joined the Allies, bringing fresh troops and renewed hope to a weary world. The 100 Days Offensive marked the beginning of the end, as coordinated Allied assaults broke through German lines, leading to the final collapse of the Central Powers. On November 11, 1918, the guns fell silent. The armistice brought an end to the fighting, but the scars of war would remain. The Treaty of Versailles redrew the map of Europe, imposing harsh terms on Germany and setting the stage for future conflicts. Join us as we uncover the human stories behind the headlines, the courage and sacrifice of those who lived through World War I, and the enduring impact of the war that reshaped our world. This is World War I, the epic journey from start to finish. By the summer of 1914, the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand had set Europe on a collision course. Diplomatic tensions reached a boiling point, and the world braced for the inevitable conflict. On July 28, 1914, Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia. This act set off a domino effect, with Russia mobilizing its forces in defense of Serbia. Germany, allied with Austria-Hungary, viewed Russia's mobilization as a direct threat and declared war on Russia on August 1st. France, bound by its alliance with Russia, found itself drawn into the conflict and declared war on Germany on August 3rd. Germany's strategy, known as the Schlieffen Plan, involved a swift invasion of France through neutral Belgium. This aggressive move prompted Britain to declare war on Germany on August 4th in defense of Belgian neutrality. Germany's initial strategy hinged on the Schlieffen Plan, aiming for a quick victory in the west before turning east to confront Russia. German forces swept through Belgium, but they encountered unexpected resistance. The early days of the war saw fierce battles as both sides vied for control. In Belgium, the small but determined Belgian army slowed the German advance, buying precious time for the Allies. Meanwhile, on the Eastern Front, Russian forces launched offensives into German and Austro-Hungarian territories. The speed and scale of Russian mobilization surprised Germany, forcing them to divert resources to the east. In response, Germany launched a counteroffensive, leading to the decisive Battle of Tannenberg, where German forces, under the command of General Paul von Hindenburg and Erich Ludendorff, inflicted a crushing defeat on the Russians. Back on the Western Front, the Germans continued their push into France, leading to the pivotal Battle of the Marne in September 1914. Here, French and British forces managed to halt the German advance, marking the failure of the Schlieffen Plan. The Battle of the Marne was a turning point. The German retreat led to a stalemate and the establishment of trench lines that would define much of the war. With both sides digging in, the Western Front stabilized into a deadly war of attrition. Trenches stretched from the North Sea to the Swiss border, and the stage was set for a prolonged and grueling conflict. On the Eastern Front, battles raged as well. After Tannenberg, the Germans achieved another significant victory at the Masurian Lakes, further solidifying their dominance over Russian forces. Next, we delve into the early battles of World War I, where the horrors of trench warfare and the first major clashes unfolded. With Europe plunged into war, the early battles of World War I revealed the brutal reality of modern warfare. Both the Western and Eastern fronts witnessed fierce combat as nations fought for dominance. On the Western Front, the war began with the Battle of the Frontiers in August 1914. French and German forces clashed in a series of battles along the borders, each side seeking a quick and decisive victory. These early battles, including the Battle of Mulhouse, the Battle of Lorraine, and the Battle of Ardennes, resulted in heavy casualties and a clear indication that the war would not be over quickly. Despite initial successes, the French forces were pushed back, and the German advance continued. This led to the pivotal Battle of the Marne in September 1914. The Battle of the Marne was a critical turning point. French and British forces managed to halt the German advance just outside Paris. The Germans were forced to retreat, and the front lines stabilized into a deadly stalemate. Following the Marne, both sides dug in, creating a network of trenches that stretched from the North Sea to the Swiss border. This marked the beginning of trench warfare, a grueling and static form of combat that would define much of the war. As the front lines settled into trench warfare, another significant battle took place in October and November 1914. The First Battle of Ypres. Ypres was crucial for control of strategic Belgian ports. The battle saw heavy fighting and marked the end of the initial mobile phase of the war on the Western Front. Both sides suffered massive casualties, and the Western Front became entrenched. On the Eastern Front, the war unfolded differently. The vast distances and harsh terrain led to fluid and large-scale movements. The Russians launched early offensives into German East Prussia and Austrian Galicia. However, the Russian advance into East Prussia was met with a decisive German response at the Battle of Tannenberg in late August 1914. Under the command of Generals Paul von Hindenburg and Erich Ludendorff, German forces encircled and destroyed the Russian Second Army. The victory at Tannenberg was a significant boost for German morale and a severe blow to Russia. Following Tannenberg, the Germans achieved another significant victory at the First Battle of the Masurian Lakes in September 1914. This battle further solidified German dominance on the Eastern Front, as they pushed Russian forces out of East Prussia. Despite these setbacks, Russia continued to fight fiercely, launching new offensives and engaging in prolonged battles. As the war progressed, the scale and intensity of the battles increased. The Western Front became a prolonged war of attrition, while the Eastern Front saw large-scale maneuvers and significant territorial changes. With the initial battles setting the stage for a long and brutal conflict, both sides began to realize that this war would be unlike any other. The introduction of new technologies and tactics would further change the nature of warfare. Next, we explore the technological advancements and the global expansion of the war, where new weapons and strategies emerged, and the conflict spread beyond Europe. As the armies clashed on the battlefields of Europe, the seas became another crucial front in World War I. Naval warfare played a pivotal role in shaping the conflict, with both the Allies and Central Powers seeking to control the oceans. The British Royal Navy implemented a naval blockade against Germany, aiming to cut off supplies and weaken the German war effort. This blockade severely restricted Germany's ability to import food, raw materials, and other essential goods. The blockade was highly effective, leading to severe shortages and economic hardship within Germany. By controlling the seas, the British sought to strangle the German economy and force a surrender. While the blockade strained Germany's resources, it also had humanitarian impacts, contributing to widespread hunger and suffering among the civilian population. In response to the blockade, Germany deployed its fleet of U-boats, or submarines, to disrupt Allied shipping and supply lines. The unrestricted submarine warfare campaign targeted military and civilian vessels alike. One of the most notorious incidents was the sinking of the RMS Lusitania on May 7, 1915. A German U-boat torpedoed the British ocean liner, killing nearly 1,200 people, including 128 Americans. This event caused international outrage and increased tensions between Germany and the United States. The U-boat threat was a significant challenge for the Allies, leading to the development of new tactics and technologies, such as convoys and depth charges, to protect merchant ships and counter the submarines. Despite these efforts, the U-boat campaign continued to take a heavy toll on Allied shipping, contributing to the overall intensity and scale of the conflict. World War I was not confined to Europe. The conflict spread across the globe, involving battles in Africa, Asia, and the Middle East, and drawing in nations from around the world. In Africa, the Allies and Central Powers fought for control of German colonies. British, French, and Belgian forces engaged in campaigns against German East Africa, Cameroon, and Southwest Africa. In Asia, Japan joined the Allies in 1914, seizing German-held territories in China and the Pacific. The Japanese Navy also played a crucial role in securing sea lanes and supporting Allied operations. The Ottoman Empire, aligned with the Central Powers, became a significant theater of war. The Gallipoli Campaign of 1915 was a major Allied effort to open a new front and secure the Dardanelles Strait. Led by British and Anzac, Australian and New Zealand Army Corps forces, the campaign aimed to knock the Ottoman Empire out of the war. However, it resulted in a costly and unsuccessful endeavor, with heavy casualties on both sides. Elsewhere in the Middle East, the Arab Revolt, supported by British intelligence officer T.E. Lawrence, sought to undermine Ottoman rule and secure Arab independence. This guerrilla warfare campaign contributed to the eventual defeat of the Ottoman forces in the region. By the end of the war, the global scale of the conflict had far-reaching implications. The collapse of empires and the reconfiguration of national borders were direct outcomes of the battles fought on distant fronts. World War I fundamentally reshaped the geopolitical landscape, with the collapse of the Austro-Hungarian, Ottoman, German, and Russian empires. New nations emerged, and the seeds of future conflicts were sown. Next, we examine the technological advancements and the new fronts that emerged during World War I, where innovation and adaptation became crucial to survival and success. World War I was a crucible of innovation, where new technologies and tactics transformed the nature of warfare. From the mud of the trenches to the skies above, the battlefields of Europe became testing grounds for advancements that would shape future conflicts. One of the most harrowing developments was the introduction of chemical warfare. On April 22, 1915, during the Second Battle of Ypres, the Germans unleashed chlorine gas, causing panic and devastating casualties among Allied troops. Later, mustard gas was introduced, causing severe blistering, blindness, and often death. The use of chemical weapons brought a new level of horror to the battlefield, leading to the development of protective measures such as gas masks. Despite international condemnation, chemical warfare became a grim reality of the conflict. To break the deadlock of trench warfare, the British introduced tanks at the Battle of the Somme in 1916. These armored vehicles could cross rough terrain, crush barbed wire, and withstand small arms fire, offering a new method to breach enemy defenses. Although initially slow and prone to mechanical failures, tanks demonstrated their potential to change the dynamics of ground combat. By the end of the war, they had become a crucial component of military strategy. The skies above the battlefield saw the dawn of a new form of combat: aerial warfare. Early in the war, aircraft were primarily used for reconnaissance, but as technology advanced, they became formidable weapons of war. Fighter aces like the Red Baron, Manfred von Richthofen, became legendary for their aerial prowess. Bombing raids and reconnaissance missions provided critical intelligence and disrupted enemy operations, establishing the importance of air superiority. Beyond the western and eastern fronts, new theaters of war emerged. In May 1915, Italy entered the war on the side of the Allies, opening a new front against Austria-Hungary along the mountainous border regions. The Italian front was characterized by brutal mountain warfare. The battles were fought at high altitudes, with soldiers enduring harsh weather conditions and treacherous terrain. Major battles, such as the battles of the Isonzo, resulted in high casualties with little territorial gain. In the Balkans, the war saw complex and shifting alliances. The region was already a hotbed of nationalist tensions, and the conflict exacerbated these issues. Serbia, initially attacked by Austria-Hungary, was later invaded by German and Bulgarian forces, leading to its occupation. However, the Allied forces, including troops from France, Britain, Greece, and the Kingdom of Serbia, launched a successful counter-offensive in 1918. These efforts culminated in the liberation of Serbia and the collapse of the Austro-Hungarian forces in the region. The Balkans were a testament to the war's complexity and the fierce fighting that occurred beyond the primary fronts. The technological advancements and new fronts of World War I significantly altered military tactics and the geopolitical landscape. As the war dragged on, the stalemate and attrition continued to take a toll on all sides. Next, we delve into the stalemate and attrition phase of World War I, exploring the harsh realities of trench warfare and the major offensives that defined this grueling period. As the initial strategies failed and the front lines stabilized, World War I descended into a brutal war of attrition. Trench warfare came to define the Western Front, where soldiers faced unimaginable hardships and the constant threat of death. Life in the trenches was a grim and grueling experience. Soldiers lived in squalid conditions, battling not only the enemy, but also the elements, disease, and pests. The trenches were often muddy, waterlogged, and infested with rats and lice. Soldiers faced the constant threat of sniper fire, artillery bombardments, and gas attacks. The psychological toll of this relentless warfare was immense. Despite the dire conditions, soldiers developed a sense of camaraderie and resilience. They created routines to maintain some semblance of normalcy, writing letters home, sharing stories, and finding small comforts in their harsh environment. Trench warfare was characterized by a deadly stalemate. Both sides were entrenched in defensive positions, making significant advances nearly impossible. The war became one of attrition, where the goal was to wear down the enemy through continuous losses. To break the deadlock, both the Allies and Central Powers launched major offensives, often resulting in massive casualties with minimal territorial gains. The battles of Ypres and Verdun are two of the most infamous examples of this grueling warfare. The Second Battle of Ypres in April 1915 marked the first large-scale use of chemical weapons by the Germans. Chlorine gas was deployed, causing widespread panic and devastating casualties among the Allied forces. Despite the horror of gas attacks, the Allies held their ground. The Third Battle of Ypres, also known as the Battle of Passchendaele, began in July 1917. The relentless rain turned the battlefield into a quagmire, making the conditions even more nightmarish. Passchendaele became a symbol of the futility and devastation of trench warfare. The battle resulted in approximately 500,000 casualties, with the Allies gaining only a few miles of territory. Another brutal engagement was the Battle of Verdun, one of the longest and costliest battles of the war. The Germans aimed to bleed France white by targeting the symbolic fortress town of Verdun. Verdun saw intense and continuous fighting for nearly 10 months. French forces, under the command of General Philippe Pétain, endured relentless German assaults. The battle resulted in around 700,000 casualties, with the front lines remaining largely unchanged. The concept of attrition warfare reached its peak during these battles. Both sides sought to exhaust the other's manpower and resources, leading to staggering losses and minimal strategic gains. As the war of attrition dragged on, the cumulative toll on soldiers and civilians grew. The stalemate on the Western Front continued, but on the Eastern Front, significant movements and changes were underway. In the East, the scale and fluidity of battles differed from the entrenched stalemate of the Western Front. Major offensives and territorial changes were frequent, adding to the overall complexity of the war. Despite significant victories, such as the Battle of Tannenberg, the Central Powers faced continuous pressure from Russian offensives. The Eastern Front was a dynamic and often chaotic theater of war. The war also saw significant developments in the Balkans, where shifting alliances and fierce fighting contributed to the broader conflict. As the Central Powers aimed to solidify their positions, the Allies sought to open new fronts and weaken their enemies. The stalemate and attrition phase of World War I was marked by intense and grueling combat, with both sides enduring immense suffering. As the war dragged on, the toll on soldiers and civilians alike was profound. After years of brutal combat and immense sacrifice, World War I reached its turning points. The entry of the United States and the collapse of the Central Powers marked the beginning of the end for one of the deadliest conflicts in history. In April 1917, the United States entered the war on the side of the Allies. Provoked by Germany's unrestricted submarine warfare and the infamous Zimmermann telegram, America's entry provided a significant boost to Allied morale and resources. Under the command of General John J. Pershing, the American Expeditionary Forces, AEF, played a crucial role in several key offensives. The fresh and well-equipped American troops helped tip the balance in favor of the Allies. The 100 Days Offensive, launched in August 1918, marked a series of decisive Allied victories that broke through German defenses. Coordinated attacks by British, French, and American forces pushed the Germans back, leading to the eventual collapse of the Western Front. Key battles such as the Battle of Amiens showcased the effectiveness of combined arms tactics, utilizing infantry, artillery, tanks, and aircraft in a coordinated effort. This offensive ultimately led to the signing of the armistice on November 11, 1918. By the end of 1918, the Central Powers were crumbling. Austria-Hungary faced internal revolutions and disintegration, leading to its surrender. The Ottoman Empire, weakened by continuous defeats and internal strife, also capitulated. Germany, isolated and facing severe economic and social unrest, experienced the abdication of Kaiser Wilhelm II and the proclamation of the Weimar Republic. The new government sought peace, leading to the end of the war. The collapse of the Central Powers marked the end of World War I, but the war's aftermath would shape the future of Europe and the world. The Treaty of Versailles, signed on June 28, 1919, officially ended the war. The treaty imposed heavy reparations on Germany and redrew the borders of Europe, creating new nations and altering existing ones. The treaty's terms were harsh, placing full blame for the war on Germany and demanding reparations that crippled the German economy. The redrawing of borders led to significant political and social upheaval, sowing the seeds of future conflicts. The war also led to the collapse of four major empires: the Austro-Hungarian, Ottoman, German, and Russian empires. This shift significantly altered the political landscape of Europe and contributed to the rise of new ideologies, including communism in Russia following the Bolshevik Revolution in 1917. The human cost of World War I was staggering. An estimated 9 million soldiers and 7 million civilians lost their lives, with millions more wounded or permanently disabled. The war left deep scars on those who survived, profoundly affecting societies around the globe. The legacy of World War I extended far beyond the battlefield. It influenced art, literature, and philosophy, as people sought to make sense of the devastation. The war also set the stage for World War II, as unresolved issues and economic hardships continued to affect the global order. The lessons learned from World War I continue to resonate today, reminding us of the profound consequences of global conflict and the importance of striving for peace. Join us in reflecting on the human cost and the lessons learned from World War I, and let's work towards a future where such a conflict is never repeated. Thank you for joining us on this journey through World War I. If you found this video informative and engaging, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Explore more of our content to learn about other pivotal moments in history and their lasting impact on our world.